last week, and enjoyed celebrating the 6th anniversary with all of you, and glad to be starting year 7 now as your pastor, and good to be in the pulpit today. I want to invite you to take your Bibles and go to the book of Matthew, chapter 6. While you're turning there, I want to tell you a story about this man. Matthew chapter 6. Like many people, Harry Spurl likes hamburgers. But this Daytona Beach, Florida resident takes his passion beyond ordering the occasional burger at a drive-thru. He has spent the past 26 years filling his home with at least 3,724 burger-related items. Nicknamed Hamburger Henry, Spurl started his collection as a way to sell a vintage drive-in tray he owned. He purchased a few plastic hamburgers to use as props when photographing the collector's item. From there, he purchased more burger merchandise for fun and started receiving them as gifts from friends and fans, who he calls his, I kid you not, hamburger helpers. Today, the Guinness World Record holder owns everything from a hamburger waterbed to a customized burger Harley Davidson. He eventually hopes to open a museum in the shape of a double bacon cheeseburger. You know, I can't make this stuff up. This guy, and he collects all these hamburgers. All right. If I had to ask you what Mr. Harry loves, what would you say? Hamburgers. He loves what he stores and treasures. In the book of Matthew, chapter 6, Jesus, during his Sermon on the Mount, takes a moment to talk about evaluating our lives, to evaluate what we love the most. Now, I've preached this passage before. It's been about a year and a half, I guess. But this is a sermon, this is the text that we're going to cover this week. And during this time, Jesus cuts to our hearts and he asks some very probing questions. Essentially, what he's saying here is, what is the most important thing to you? What do you love the most in this life? And you might be wondering, well, how can I really tell what I really love the most? How can somebody who's living their life day by day really understand what their life is all about? You've heard the phrase, you can't see the forest for the trees. And smart people do something when they're trying to make a big decision or they're trying to get perspective on something. They do what's called asking somebody outside the situation. It's good to call somebody who's not right here. It's good to call somebody who's not involved with that conflict and say, you know, I want a third-party perspective here. Am I crazy for thinking this? Or, you know, I've been thinking about doing something. What do you think? You're not right here every day. You can give me a good perspective. We need that kind of perspective, don't we? Someone who's not right here going through it day by day, who can easily lose sight of where our lives are going. We can oftentimes deceive ourselves and get to a point where we don't even know where we're going in life. When you get asked the question, what is your life really all about? It's easy to say, well, my life's all about God. Or my life is all about family. Or my life is all about my job or my school. What is your life really all about? We need that perspective. We need some clarity here. I think when you really, this morning, as we take some time and we really dig in and we look at the words of Jesus, we will come face to face with what our lives are truly about, and the results may startle you. I know they startled me. Let's look at what Jesus says in Matthew 6, starting in verse 19. Jesus says this, "Do not Lay up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moth and rust destroy, and where thieves break in and steal. But lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust destroys, and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. Jesus starts off this very powerful teaching. And I would say this is a very painful teaching. What Jesus is doing here is exploratory surgery. He's going in, he's cutting to the heart, he is digging around, and he is finding the problem that lies within each and every one of us. He starts off by making this very strong commandment. Do not lay up for yourselves treasures on earth. You know what one of our biggest problems is, church? Materialism. I am going to make an accusation against each and every one of you, and myself included. You are all too materialistic. I am too materialistic. We have been trying to start off the new year by doing some spring cleaning around the house. And you know what we've come to realize? We have too much junk. I'm really bad at this. I'll go to the store and I say, that's a nice shirt. And I'll buy it, and then it looks great, it fits great. And then I wash it, and that thing happens where it just gets a little tight around the arms. Or it just kind of, the buttons kind of don't want to hold on too well when you stretch or sit down. So I don't wear it anymore. And then I decide, there's a sale here, let me go take a look. I find something else. And so I buy that shirt. I said, well, they're on sale, me two of them. And then I may or may not wear them, and I might wear them for a little while, and then the same thing happens. I don't know why my clothes keep getting smaller. It's got to be that washer, right? No, I'm just teasing. Sometimes I just don't like the way it feels, or sometimes it doesn't look that good to my wife, and so I choose not to wear it because I've learned my lesson. She knows better than I do. We have rooms full of stuff. Think about that, friend. You have a house that's full of stuff. And many of us have garages that are full of stuff. And then sometimes we don't have enough room there. We go and we rent a storage building or a storage unit to put our stuff in. And then sometimes that's not enough. We call family and we say, hey, family, can I borrow a little bit of space in your attic? Hey, you have a steel building in your backyard. Can I put a little stuff in there? Some people have entire warehouses full of stuff. I kid. I saw the looks going on back there. Mike's got a warehouse, in case you didn't know. It's full of stuff. The truth of the matter is, though, we are very, very materialistic. That's just the way we tend to be as people. We tend to hold on to things. And there's nothing wrong with saving things you might need, but there comes to a point where you just got to get rid of some stuff. The problem is not maybe having a messy closet. We're not talking about how to do spring cleaning here. We're talking about the heart. Jesus says, do not lay up for yourselves treasures on earth. The focus here is do not spend your life pursuing earthly things. Don't live like everybody else lives. Don't always live in what we call the rat race. Quit trying to always climb some ladder. Quit trying to always just make more money or have the nicest things. I'm just getting personal this morning. We went a while back, probably about a year ago. We decided to go in Saks Fifth Avenue or something. It's one of those real expensive stores. We went to North Park Mall, which, you know what you learn when you go to North Park Mall? I tell you what I learned, I can't afford any of it. That's what I learned. We're looking around in North Park Mall, and there was this ugly, I wouldn't buy it at Goodwill, ugly shirt for $100. It was a t-shirt for $100. You know what's funny? A t-shirt from Walmart will last just as long and probably look just as good. But there is something in us that says, I have to have the best. It's not enough to get a purse from Target. I need a purse from wherever you ladies buy your fancy purses. It's not enough to drive a car that works fine. I need to have a luxury car. It's not enough to have a house where we have to share a little bit of space. We need more space. It's not enough to have a 40-inch TV. I need a 60-inch TV. And I'm preaching to the choir because I have a large TV. Jesus is challenging everything that we love to do as people who live in this world. He is saying your life is not about physical things. Your life is not, or even the success of your life is not based on how much money you have in the bank. It's not based on what degree you have or how well you did in school. It's not based on your title. Many people today, I see especially in the younger adults who are just really starting to get into their careers, we have this idea that what we have isn't good enough. We need to get more and more and more. I've told you the story many times of Rockefeller. Somebody asked him, well, when will you have enough money? What would you say? When is it enough? And he says, well, I'll have enough when I have a little more. It's always a little more, always a little more. Can I just ask you a question? What is your life really all about? What do you love the most? What Jesus is saying here is so profound because he's saying, this is the test. This is the test of what you really love the most and what you are really living for. First question, or first commandment rather, do not lay up for yourselves treasures on earth. He goes on to say where moth and rust destroy and where thieves break in and steal. What he's saying is that these things are not lasting. They are temporary. And ultimately they wind up being useless. Your car will be in a junkyard one day. Your house will be infested with termites one day. If a tornado doesn't take it away first, or a fire. Some of y'all remember we went to Rowlett a few years ago and helped with the tornado cleanup. Nice houses, very nice houses, destroyed in a night. That's the way the world goes. We are told always to pursue more money. You take the job that pays better. You go to the career program or the college program that will help you earn more money. We're always told to have nicer things. We're always told to pursue a higher level of status. We're always taught to have more success. What Jesus says, though, is if you pursue those things, understand that it just takes a moth to eat them up. And the word for rust there really refers to any kind of decay, whether it's rotting wood or wasting away stone or rusted out metal. All the stuff that you pursue, if it's earthly, it will come to nothing. The devil has played a great trick on us. Make your life about earthly things and you miss out on the opportunity to make it about heavenly things. And we have some really interesting ways of changing things around to make it fit our situation better. Well, I go to church. Well, I'm a good tither. Well, praise the Lord. Those are great things. Every Christian should be. It's not the amount you give that matters. It's the heart behind it. There are poor people who give more than rich people. It's not based on the dollar sign. It's based on what you have and your obedience to the Lord. We say, well, I can be a devoted Christian, but I can also really pursue everything else I want at the same time. Is that really getting to the heart of the issue to say, I'm okay with God, but I still want to pursue everything that I want in addition to God? why isn't God all you want? Why isn't God enough? Why isn't living just above the poverty line where you have all your needs met, you have a place to live, you have food, you have a good car, you have all you need. Why wouldn't that be enough? I know I'm really poking hard this morning. Why isn't your health enough? Why isn't what God has seen fit to give you, why is that not enough? Why do you feel the need to have more? There's nothing wrong with being smart with your money. There's nothing wrong with saving money and making good decisions. There's nothing wrong with saving up to buy something new. There's nothing wrong with having some retirement set aside. But where do you draw the line? Where does it go from having smart practices and making good life decisions? Where does it go from that to I'm laying up treasures on earth? I think the line that we cross comes somewhere in this neighborhood. I know I have God, but I feel a lot better with this in the bank. That's when you've crossed the line. I know I have God, and I know I have family, but I feel a lot better if I live in this kind of house. Well, I know I'm saved, and I know I have people who love me, and God has seen fit to give me everything I need in life, but I really won't be happy until I get to live in this house or drive this car. That's when you've crossed the line. When you stop being content with what God has given you and say, if I really push it, I can have better than what God has given me. Or I'm not content with just God alone. Let me ask you this. If God saw fit to put you in a single wide trailer in the middle of nowhere with a Bible, would that be enough? If God saw fit to take away the nicest things you own, would that be enough? If you're starting to say, wow, this seems pretty extreme, what do you think Jesus is saying here? Do not lay up treasures for yourself on earth. Oh, he gets much more extreme than that because Jesus at one point tells the rich young ruler to sell all that he has. That's not saying that in order to follow Jesus, you have to live in a cardboard box under the bridge over here. No. What it's saying here is if you love your possessions so much that it competes with God, get rid of the possessions so you can put God back in the right place. Some of us don't have that problem. We're like, no, I'm poor. That's fine. So they'll say, I'm poor now, I'm going to die poor. There won't be a dime left for the kids. They may even have some debt that comes their way. And you've got a good perspective on life. Some of us say, you know what? My identity and my life and my everything is found in everything else, maybe not in place of God, but in addition to God. And that's a problem. Do not lay up things on earth. Jesus then gives a second command in verse 20. But lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't know why I have to do this. Think about it. Maybe you're like me. I'm just glad I'm going to heaven. I mean, why would I need to lay up treasure in heaven? Isn't heaven good enough? Well, of course it is. Well, isn't God good enough? Of course he is. So why lay up treasure? Well, there's a simple explanation for this. It's a deep, deep theological answer. You ready for it? Because he said to. When you spend your life doing what you were created to do, it's going to be evident because you're laying treasure up in heaven. The treasure you lay up is evidence of the obedience that you practice in this life. In Ephesians 2, verse 10, it says that we were created for good works. We were saved for good works. Those works were prepared for us beforehand. What are some of these good works? Well, if I had to be a betting man, and by the way, I think it's interesting that Jesus didn't say what those things were. He didn't say what those treasures were. He just says treasure. It's a very general term. I think by saying it and keeping it vague, Jesus is saying, I'm not going to make it easy for you. I'm not going to give you one or two little things to do. I want this to encompass your whole life. I want every part of your life. You can't just nitpick and say, well, I did one or two areas where I can lay up treasure and I can live the rest of the way I want to. Jesus says your whole life is all about laying up treasure in heaven. It's not about laying up treasure on earth. In other words, your whole perspective has to shift drastically. Do not store up earthly treasure. Store up heavenly treasure. It's vague on purpose. It's vague so it can be all-encompassing. The treasure could be people we've shared the gospel with. Wouldn't it be great to go to heaven and see somebody there that you got to tell about Jesus? Won't that be great? If nothing else, it ought to be your children. If nothing else, it ought to be your best friend, someone that you saw so often in his life. Maybe it's preparing ourselves for heaven. You're preparing yourself for heaven while you're on earth. Getting ready to meet your Savior. It's the good works that you were created to do. And finally, we should understand that our treasure will not serve to glorify ourselves. In other words, you're not going to get to heaven and say, well, look at all my treasure. You know, I did okay. I mean, I know Moses, you got a really big pile, and Peter, your pile's but mine's respectable. It's a pretty good pile of treasure. No. I think that the treasure is not all about us, it's all about God. Our treasure will fuel the fire of praise and worship forever in heaven. Look what God did with this poor man. Look what God did with this sinner. Look what God did with someone who's broken. Look what God did with someone who screwed their lives up for years and years, but God saved me. Look what God did. Look at this treasure. What Jesus is giving us here is not a method of figuring out what to do as much as showing us what we love. The heart of the issue is this. Christian, what are you really all about? Take down the facades. Take away the act. Put away the churchiness for a little while. We're all wearing nice clothes. We all come with a smile on our face. Oh, so good to see you. Oh, long time no see. Praying for you. Sing our songs. Amen, preacher. Really, let's just put all that aside, man. Let's look at our hearts. Not that there's anything wrong with showing up at the church with a smile on your face, but let's just be extra real for a minute. Really, where is your heart this morning? Because Jesus says this in verse 21, where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. That's a bit confusing to our ears. We don't really say things in that order. So let me put it in a way that we might say it today. What you treasure shows what you love. What you treasure, what you value, what you pursue, that shows the condition of your heart. I want you to imagine real quick if you were to take your cell phone out and open up your banking app and look at your expenses. We used to say the checkbook. Some people still use checkbooks, many don't. But you can pretend it's a checkbook if you still use a checkbook. And you look at all of your expenses and you just say, what do I love the most? Well, I've spent $80 this month on eating out. I spent $120 at the outlet mall. Spending a lot of money on movies and Netflix and Hulu. I'm spending like $50 a month on coffee. Whatever it is. Those are outlandish numbers, I know. I'm spending $500 a month or $600, $800 a month on a car. What do you treasure? It's not that hard to figure it out. Just look at where your heart is and look at what you're pursuing. I know this may hurt, but it has to be said. This is the message the Lord has given us today. Where your treasure is, there is your heart also. In the book of 1 John, chapter 2, read verses 15 through 17, the Apostle John says this, and it fits so perfectly with what Jesus says here. It says this, do not love the world or the things in the world. If anyone loves the world, the love of the Father is not in him. Christians, you are not supposed to love this world. You're not supposed to be in love with the rat race. You're not supposed to be in love with the things of this world. You should not be in love with your house. You should not be in love with your car, or your purse, or your shoes, or your job, or anything. The only thing that you can be in love with is God and your family, and to praise Him for what He has given you. You're not called to love those things. They're things. They are not your God. Career, education, advancement, fulfillment, those are sorry substitutes for our God. When God was leading Israel in the wilderness, He gave them what? He gave them water. He gave them manna. He did not give them wine and T-bone steaks. Or as we would say, tea and tacos as Baptists. He did not give them the best, the biggest meats, and they were not called to love the things that they were given. When they go to the promised land, they were not called or commanded to love the land. They were called and commanded to love the God who gave it to them. And for the possessions that God has given them to serve as a means of praise. When you leave here and you put your key in the ignition and you turn it, do not say, oh, I love my car. Say, oh, I love you, God. You've seen fit to bless me with a way to go to church. When you sit down and you get your food and you don't say, oh, I just love to say, God, thank you for blessing me with this. Because there's really nothing that's keeping you from being under a bridge somewhere but the grace of God. We would do well to remember this. Do not love the world or the things in the world. If anyone loves the world, the love of the Father is not in him. What a bold statement. How can John say this? How can our pastor say this? Well, I'll tell you how. Because when you are full of the love of God, you don't have room for anything else. For all that is in the world, the desires of the flesh. Now, this is where it gets very personal. What do you desire? We just had Christmas. We bought little girl a bunch of toys and stuff. I mean, not a ton, but enough. You know what she tells me a couple of days after Christmas? I want that. No. First of all, I don't know how we're going to buy it. Second of all, you don't need anything else. You got all you need. You have plenty of stuff. But really, we're that way as adults too. I'm going to go get a new car. What's wrong with the one you have? Well, nothing really. I just want a new one. I want a different house. Why? Is your roof falling apart? Is your foundation? No, I just want a bigger house. Well, I want this sports package. Why? Don't you get the Mavs games on the regular one? Can't you see the Cowboys games on local TV? I just want more. And those are silly examples maybe, but I think they get to the heart of the issue. We just want more things. More, 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 more. That's the desires of the flesh. All that is in the world, the desires of the flesh and the desires of the eyes. Ooh. It's things we see. Things that we crave. And the pride of life. You know, it doesn't just have to be money. It could be someone else's spouse. It doesn't have to be a nice house. It could be someone else's job. Can we just get real for a minute? It might even be someone else's health. I wish I had their health. I wish I had what they had. I wish I had their spouse. I wish I had their job. I wish I was smart like them, or pretty like them, or successful like them. What earthly things? Those don't matter. It's baloney. It's bull. It's silly. And if you lay up those things, they're going to go to waste. I don't know anything that my great-grandparents owned. It's in a landfill somewhere. There's been times where I've had a fairly good amount of money. You know what happened to it? Well, I'm driving on it, and it's at the hospital. That's just the way it goes. It will always have a place to be spent. It will always be taken away. It will always start to not fit. It will always wear out. It will always break. It could always be stolen. Oh, but not what we do for God, though. Isn't that what he says? Lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust destroys, and where thieves do not break in and steal. You want to know the most secure bank? I tell you, the bank is so good, it's out of this world. It's heaven. Literally, it's out of this world. It's in heaven. That was my attempt at a joke. I didn't go over so well. Jesus says in verse 21, "For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also." This is where Jesus says, signed, sealed, delivered. This is where he says, case closed. This is where he says, yeah, there's nothing else to do. I mean, that's it. Deal with it. Whatever your phrase is when you've just had enough and you said, that's it. You can't do anything about that. This is where Jesus says, I got you. Because I just told y'all that you shouldn't lay up earthly treasures. That's a waste. And then I told you to go ahead and make a priority of laying up heavenly treasure. Now let me ask you this. Where's your heart? Well, Master, how do we know where our heart is? It's almost as if Jesus anticipates that question, because he says, where your treasure is, that's where your heart is. So where is it, church? What are your goals this year? Are they God-honoring? Where are you spending your money? The preachers preaching to us about, I'm not talking about money, I'm talking about things in general. I mean, what you give is between you and God. This is not a tithing sermon. And by the way, the word used for money is later on, he talks about, in verse 24, man cannot serve God and money. The word there is actually mammon. And that's not just the idea of money, it's money in possessions. What do you have a lot of? What do you spend your time on? What is your faith in? Is it easier to trust God when you have more money or when you have less? Is it easier to trust God when the car is running well? Is it easier to trust God and to worship God when your house is extra fancy? Or you have what you want out of life? Let me tell you, do not put Jesus in a ring of having to compete with your possessions. Because he will have no problem taking them away. I mean, that's just the way it goes. One touch from Jesus and he'll say, I'll show you what it's like to just have me. And when he does that, it hurts really bad, but it's really good for us. That last verse, verse 24. No one can serve two masters. You see, I don't want you to leave here today thinking, okay, Pastor coached us today and he gave us a really good sermon about, I hope it's really good. He gave us a sermon. I'm going to assume it's really good. He gave us a really good sermon today on having good priorities and making sure that we don't have our lives be all about stuff. You missed the point. Pastor gave you a sermon asking you the question, where is your heart? And you can know where your heart is based on what your treasure is. Do you treasure your stuff By stuff, I don't just mean what's sitting at your house. I mean what you've made your life about, what you're trusting in. Or are you laying up treasure in heaven? And it's very visible in your life, very easy to see. They treasure Jesus so much because they don't care about all that other stuff. They just care about Him. They're willing to take a pay cut to be at church on Sunday. That's an extreme example, but it could happen. They're willing not to get a promotion so they can have time to go on a mission trip every summer. That sounds crazy. Really, it's not. It's called being a Christian. They're willing to sell things to maybe help others. Or maybe they're giving things away. They don't really wear that often, or maybe that it's really not for them, and they don't really need it anymore, and they give it to those who need it more. Maybe they decide not to make their life all about stuff and actually say, we're going to do more good with what God has given us. Whatever it is. I don't know your situation. Jesus says no one can serve two masters. You don't get to have a dualism here. God and money side by side. God and possessions. God and life goals. God and career. God and whatever else you want to have. You don't get to have those side by side and balance them out. Jesus says you can't do that. You can't balance them out. Verse 24, no one can serve two masters. For either he will hate the one and love the other, or he will be devoted to one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and money or possessions. That word there, mammon, money or things. In other words, it's Jesus or it's stuff. It's Jesus or it's career. I'm not saying that God doesn't give you a career. What I'm saying is, what is it all about in you? What is your life all about? Some people are just all about their career and all about growing and all about getting more and all about saving more. And that's a bunch of baloney. God gives you a job, you be the best at your job you can be wise with your money, do all that good stuff, but that's not your treasure. Your treasure is Christ. You can't have it both ways, is what he says. One or the other, Jesus or something else. Well, how do I know which one I have? Look at what you've accumulated. Good old Hamburger Henry, or Hamburger Harry. We know what he was all about. He's going to die with thousands of hamburger-related paraphernalia in his house. What is your life all about? Where is your heart? Well, look at what you have a lot of. Is it earthly treasure or heavenly treasure? And then get it right with God one way or the other. Let's pray. Lord, we thank you.